Morning. Last week, I spoke. Do you remember? Well, then I went out to my car and it wouldn't start because that's how life goes. And then 3 people show up to try and help me. And then one of them had we were actually 0 for 1, 0 for 2, so we're like, oh, it might be something really bad, worse than a battery. And then we had a battery boost. You know what this is? Well, it boosts the battery. That's what it does. You hook it on there, you press a button, and voila, it works. And they're telling me where to go to get it changed and all that stuff, helping me out. Welcome to Woodcrest. That's what this is. That's what the church gathering is about, is that we come together and sometimes you come in and you need a boost, a spiritual boost. And that's why we sing and that's why we reflect on God's word. It's just kind of this boost to get you going in your week. And sometimes you come and you need to be the booster. You need to be the one giving. I bet those 3 people who helped me felt useful for having helped me or trying to help me. There's a beauty in that. So Woodcrest, that's what we want to do. We want to come together. We want to be that people. We want to do life together, build that kind of community where we boost each other on towards love and good deeds, where we come to know God and his word better, where we do life together, even when the cars don't start. Some of you come in here, your car's not started, right? You have a need. Maybe it's financial worries. Maybe it's the government shutdowns affecting your job. Maybe it's Mizzou Vanderbilt. Maybe it's that. That game brought me so low. And then the team was rehearsing. They were playing the music, and I was sitting over there kind of humming and singing, trying to do what she was doing, but it didn't work quite right. But I was trying, and all of a sudden that got put on its proper shelf. Still meaningful, still important, but it got put in the proper place. And I can go into my week, my life better. And then from this big gathering, we make these little sub-communities like Thrive or Next Gen or these different things where you get together, you do love and good deeds to the community, you go boost batteries together, you do some stuff. That's what this is. That's what we're building. That's what we're trying to do together. So I hope you'll come along for the ride. And I'm not just saying that to visitors. We have some visitors. Join us. We could use you. We would love to have you. We'd love to get to know you. But then also people who've been here for a bit. A year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years. What was I'll get it wrong, but G.K. Chesterton quote. People didn't love Rome because she was great. She became great because people loved her. That's what we get to do. We rally around a community, an environment, and we love it into health with Christ as the cornerstone. So anyway, that's that. The other part about church is sometimes you get complaints. And I got a couple complaints last week, so I brought one in to read. We have an iron. Next time that's a different complaint. I meant to bring the other complaint. That was a more intimate variety. Apparently I was a little wrinkly last week. Real people, real journey. I did have another complaint that I meant to write down. That was a different one. The other complaint comes from someone in that section over there who cornered me and said, "You left us on a cliffhanger." I was like, no, I didn't. The Bible did. The people who put the little numbers in the Bible became printed, then they put little numbers in there. I went straight to the end of the chapter. That's where it stopped. And what we have going on there, if you weren't here, is Paul, against much counsel, against the guy who ties himself up in a weird way, and against common sense, goes to Jerusalem. He isn't supposed to go there. This would be like Harry Potter just swinging by Voldemort to trick or treat, and Hermione's like, "It's a trap, Harry." If he would just listen to Hermione, the Harry Potter series would be cut in half. Just listen to her, but he wants to swing by anyway. This is like Michael Scott going to the HR convention. This one's a little harder. This is like Martin Luther King Jr. attending a KKK rally. Ooh, that's severe, you can't say that. But it's not too far from reality. On this stage, just a handful of years ago, I had a work event. And we had the work event, we hosted it here. And there's this guy named Daryl Davis who played guitar with his teeth. That first weird flex, that's like a chef being like, "Well, I'm gonna do the souffle with my toes." It's like, why is playing the guitar with your teeth better than your hands? I don't know, it was strange, but he did that. But that's not what he's famous for, playing guitar with his teeth. What he's famous for is that he is a black man, and he gained his fame by befriending KKK members and even attending rallies to dissuade their hatred. What? You can't go there? That's dangerous. But also it's powerful. He strolled into those things unafraid, and that's not even true, is it? Unafraid. That's what we theme this around, but there is no unafraid, right? Fear is always there. What happens is there's a courage that overwhelms the fear. But the courage is the leader now. It's stronger. And that's what Paul says. Paul says, "I am going." And all his friends say, "This is not going to go well." And in earthly terms, they are right. It doesn't go well. That he's snatched up, he's swarmed, he's beaten badly, and then he's arrested. And then, due to his Roman citizenship, he's granted permission to speak to the raging mob. you see how crazy this is to speak like this? Like, there's different lists of fears, but one of the ones that I like the best, the list of modern fears that people fear, like their rankings. Number 2 on that list usually is death. Number 2 is death. That means there's something we're more afraid. We're scared to death of something else. That's something else. Number 1, public speaking. So here he's like mashing these things up. Death and public speaking, merging them together. He's like, I'll have the misery combo. Make it large. Give it all to me. It's like this huge thing he's doing. He steps up. Can you imagine stepping up to that audience? Like, I've spoken a lot. I've spoken to some weird places, some weird audiences. One weird one that comes to mind is I was supposed to speak after a rivalry football game. 2 high school teams, rivals, and I was going to speak. It was in this parking lot. You're going to come up from the stadium. They thought there'd be 50 kids there. 500 show up. And I didn't have a stage. I didn't have a light on me. I just had this little janky PA system, microphone, and all 500 got saved. No, I'm kidding. They didn't listen to a word I said. I could see them like chicken fighting. Some of you are like, oh, really? Tell me more. No, there's nothing to tell. They couldn't hear me. They didn't like me. They were hurling curse words at me. It was the worst. I was getting paid, so I just kept going through it. But they like totally wasted my brilliance and eloquence. And speaking of that brilliance and eloquence, here's another one I had to do recently. I had to speak to 7th graders, 8th graders, and 9th grade boys. They're in like a kind of a lock-in sort of environment. They're going to do 3 activities. 2 activities were fun. 1 activity was sitting in a room and listening to me for 30 minutes. And the 7th graders were first. 60 of them walk in. And I was like, hey, we're your leaders. They're like, our leaders take a break during this part. I was like, that doesn't seem like a good situation for the 1 speaker. I'm the 1 adult, 60 7th graders. And I crushed it. I started with some sports talk. They started telling some jokes. And then I turned serious, and that's where you know if you have them or not. I turned it serious. You could hear a pin drop. I was like, some things are going to happen tonight. God's Spirit is moving. This is exciting. This is great. And I'm just going to level with you. We're family, or we want to be. And if you're mad, you can again send a complaint to me. I'm just going to tell you what happened. You could hear a pin drop. And as I'm getting into the crux of what I'm doing, which is the crux, I'm going to talk about the cross here. I'm getting passionate, dead quiet, and I let the quiet sit there. And then this kid rips the tremendous fart. I know I'm not probably supposed to say that at church, but that's what happened. And it was a total accident. I could see him. He was right in the middle. We locked eyes. It still haunts my dreams, this kid, because it was an accident. He's like, oh, no. And then everyone laughing. So then he starts laughing like, this is pretty cool. And it was just crazy. Like, I couldn't. The room erupted. His pants might have. I don't know what's going on. And then the laughter was uncontrollable, and that was just mine. And I had to rein these guys. And we had 25 minutes left. It was rough. This other one, this is like good therapy. I was speaking in a field at a small town. They were having like a big town block party, but the town was only like 300 or 400. So they're all there, and I'm supposed to speak for 30 minutes, and then my partner in ministry or whatever it is, the guitarist, he's gonna come up and he's gonna play like Jesus songs for 30 minutes and then do Leonard Skinner after that. Then do 30 minutes of like cover songs. That was the plan. And I go up and give my 30 minutes, and it was poetic, and it was sweeping, and it was planned. That was the big part. I planned it. And I was hitting all the right notes. Everything was working. And then I jumped down from mine. And I was like ready to high five him as he came up, and he was backstage, and he's like, I can't go on. And I was like, what do you mean you can't go on? He goes, my fingers hurt. And I was like, your back's gonna hurt. You just pulled landscaping duty. My fingers hurt. It's too cold. It was a real cold night. It was outdoors. He's like, it's too cold. You can't play guitar when it's this cold. I was like, you big musician baby, get up there and play the guitar. He wouldn't do it. Here's the thing. They had paid us in advance. And we didn't have any money. We were super broke. So I was like, it's my time to shine. So I went up there, 60-minute filibuster, unplanned. Jokes, I was trying some jokes out. That went well. I was trying some preaching. I was just trying some topical things. Let's talk about politics. I was just trying anything, and it was just awful. And then I think about these terrible times. Have you ever spoken to a crowd, and it's just like, ugh. Like even today, I get in here, and it's like, probably some of you really dislike me, and I get it. I look in the mirror, and I agree. But the worst you're going to do is complain about me in the car or say my shirt was wrinkled. Like, that's as far as it goes. Paul here stands in front of a group that's much larger than this, and they want to kill him a lot. What do you say? And so that's why it's interesting to look at this chapter, because it's what he says. These are kind of like his last words, possibly. What does he choose to say as his last words to these people who hate him and want to kill him? So we can look at what he says, and then the second thing we can realize is that if he can say these things at the brink, couldn't we contend with meager hostilities and do the same? Like those stories I tell you, they're like uncomfortable, but who cares? So, 22 opens up verse 1 and 2. It says, brothers and fathers, Listen now to my defense. This is Paul talking to the crowd. When they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. How does he start? Brothers, fathers. The same brothers and fathers who just had him on the ground beating him. The same ones who have called for his head and his blood. The same ones who are still frothing, wanting him dead. Isn't that something? He's not mean. He's not vengeful. He's bleeding. And through the blood, he opens with love. He also speaks to them in Aramaic. That's their language. That's sort of their tribes, their nationality. That's their language that they would use in common tongue. That's their speak. And he's meeting them where they are. Sometimes people come and ask me how to be a public speaker, and I don't know. As you can tell, pretty untrained. I just get up here and sling it. But I have these 3 things that I tell them, and I think we see these things here, and you can apply these if you want, if you're ever speaking to someone. I think this goes if you're on a stage somewhere, if you're one-on-one somewhere. But the first thing I tell people is know yourself. Know yourself. We had this thing at a church I worked at where we'd have college kids come during their gap year. They'd graduate and they think they want to do ministry, so they come and just serve the church for a year. And I was in charge of the preaching stuff. I'd listen to them and help them. And there's this one guy, he was smart. He knew his Bible really well, and he gave his talk. It was just to me and a few others, and we were assessing it. And I took him up later for assessment. I was like, dude, don't tell jokes. He's like, oh, when I preach, don't tell jokes? I was like, no, never. Just never tell another joke. Because he was just, the first 10 minutes was him just trying to be funny, and he's not funny. I even asked him, I was like, do you normally make people laugh? You're at the party, are you telling jokes? Does your significant other think you're funny? He's like, no, not at all. I was like, then don't think that 400 people are going to think you're funny. Don't tell jokes. What we mean here is be the varsity version of you, not the JV version of someone else. Do you know what you're good at? Do you know how you come across? Leverage that stuff. Use it. So know yourself. The second one is know your stuff. You kind of got to know what you're talking about a little bit. You don't have to know everything, but you kind of got to know a little bit. Right now, we're doing what? Acts 22? This is not the first time I've read it this week. That's important. Because if I'm going to be here to talk about it for 35 minutes, I better have read it some. Some of you still know more about it than me, but a lot of you don't yet. You will soon. But you kind of got to know a little bit of your stuff. And then the third one I tell people, and this was the important one, I think, most important probably, love your audience. There are times I'm up here, I want to go for an hour, and then I see and Drew starts drooling. I was like, I better wrap it up. That's my guide. When Drew starts drooling, I finish because I love my audience. You have to meet people where they are, and that's what he's doing here. You don't demand that they come to your level. Like with those 7th graders, I wasn't going to adult my way back in their good graces. Rather, my only avenue in that talk when that thing happened was remember what it was like to be a 7th grader and meet them there. Love covers a multitude of sins, smells and sounds too. Love people, meet them where they are, and that's what Paul does here. Brothers, fathers. 3, Paul says, I'm a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. I studied under Gamaliel. We saw him earlier in Acts. He is the rabbi's rabbi. He doesn't take that many students. He's the man. He's well respected. He's like getting trained by Yoda. I studied under Yoda is what he's saying, all right? I was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way of Christianity. I persecuted Christians to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them into prison. As the high priest and all the council can testify, I even obtained letters from them and their associates in Damascus and went there to bring these people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished. So I'm taking my show on the road. What he's saying here is, y'all are Jews. I'm the Jew of Jews. I'm like the next level of Jew. You all are zealous. I'm more zealous. Like if you're someone who leans right, he's like, I am alt-right. I'm as right as you. Or if you lean left, he's like, I'm as far left as you can get. That's where I was. He's doing this. I'm smarter than you. I'm fiercer than you. I was the golden boy of Jerusalem. And he's saying these things. First, he's saying these things as a great rhetorical device that's been used throughout the ages. If I'm this far and you're here and I can change, you can change too. That's what he's doing. That's the case he's building. The second thing he's doing here, he's beginning to tell his story. And he can tell his story because he has figured his story out. Question to today. Have you? Have you parsed out the details of your own story? I know life's busy, but do you think about your thinking? Do you think about your past? Are you able to sit down with a piece of paper and kind of figure out your story a bit? And then can you tell it well? And then the next level is, can you tell it differently? I'm going to speak to you all differently than I would those 7th graders. You might speak to your cousin differently than you speak to a stranger. You might be in an elevator and get an opportunity. That's going to be about a 15-second version. And then other times you might have a 15-minute version. You might need a 50-minute version. Do you have all of it figured out? When it comes to testimonies, my favorite one in Scripture is, I've said it up here before. You should know it by now. I once was blind, but now what is it? Isn't that great? I once was blind, but now I see. That's how you build your story. So you focus on the I once was blind part. How were you blind? What was your life like BC, before Christ? What was it like? And then you tell that. And then now I see how. How is that going for you? What is it like having a life of vision? What's life like now that Christ has confronted your life? So you plant the cross at the middle of those, and what it creates is a clear before and after. And here's what I would say. If you have no after, you have no Christ. Your after might come in stages. It might be slow. It might be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I'm not saying all of a sudden everything about me was different. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if there's no earmark of change in your life after Christ comes into your life, you probably haven't actually taken Christ into your life. You might say the words, but he is a catalyzing agent that brings change. You will have change if you truly invite him to be the leader of your life. And Paul here is setting himself up as a great example of the extent that grace can go. This is what it's like. It's like early stages, up-and-coming Hitler when he's making speeches and stuff, anti-Semitic stuff. It's like him converting to Judaism. That's what that would be like. We're talking like 1936 Hitler being like, you know all that stuff I've been saying? I'm going to become a Jew. That's what this is. This guy who hates this movement, who speaks about this movement, who drags this movement and arrests this movement, joining this movement. And that's why this is such a strong apologetic, that something happened to Paul. This testimony is mentioned in the Bible 6 times. We already went over it once in Acts 9 when it happened. But it's mentioned 6 times in the Bible. And it's mentioned because it takes this man who's on a run-of-the-mill business trip and suddenly, instantly, quits his job, forfeits his friends, his family, any potential at fortune, and then he joins the rival company. He joins the other team, and he never looks back. He's tempted to look back, says no to temptation. He's threatened to look back by violence and by death, and he just won't go back. So either Paul is a total lunatic, or his experience with Jesus was real, or at least real to him. And here's the thing, if he's a lunatic, you take that option. The lunacy comes without any kind of health shift or trauma. It's not because he went to war, or he wasn't assaulted in some way. No, he's just like riding on a donkey. He has a rented donkey. He is in a rental car, and it just shifts. There's not even a radio. A song's not even playing. It's nothing. It just changes in an instant. Also, that sanity would come on and not diminish any of his skills. So Paul was a great speaker, a great writer, and a great strategist. Post-conversion, he's a great speaker, he's a great writer, he's a great strategist. You ever heard of that condition? A person just gets embedded into total lunacy, but yet all their skills stay immensely sharp in every way. That almost takes more faith to believe that he was crazy than that something real happened to him. This is what Paul, the case he's building, this is him, paraphrase. I was stridently violent toward any threat to my nationalistic instincts. And then, on like a Tuesday, everything changed. Do you have that Tuesday? And maybe it's a Sunday. Maybe it's today. It's like something gets unlocked today. You're like, someone said something, or someone coughed, or someone sang something, and then it just was different. Do you have that? Okay, we'll go to the next verses. These, I'm not going to say the numbers. They're between 5 and 8 reasons. All right? If you're 13, you understand that. All right. The verse after verse 5 says, about noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul. Real quick, his name was Saul before it became Paul. It's the same guy. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? That ain't good. No, he didn't say, why do you persecute them? Why do you persecute my followers? Why do you persecute those people in Damascus? Why do you persecute me? We growing up, there's these boys called the Fleming boys. That's what we called them because that was their name, the Fleming boys. It was Lance and Ross. And they would have this Bible study. We were like 7th graders, right? Bible study. We'd go to their house and play video games and then spend like 5 minutes reading the Bible. But they had this dad there. And boys love dominion and conquering. If you have boys, you know this, especially as they get in those middle school years. And so 10 of us would huddle up and be like, let's attack. And we'd attack this dad. And the reason we'd attack this dad is because he was a police officer by day, a bodyguard by night, and he was a jiu-jitsu master. He knew jiu-jitsu, he knew all kinds of karate. I don't even know the phrase. He knew all of it. He had belts and belts and belts, all of them black or different colors, like amazing guy. So we would all gather up and we'd be like, let's take him. And then he was just like, choo, choo, choo. It was like Kung Fu Panda. He would just like, he'd wring us out like dirty dish rags. He would like juggle us like rag dolls, and we loved it, right? We were all bleeding and bruised, and we're like, that guy's awesome. It's great. It was all in good fun. It wasn't abuse. It was all in good fun. We asked for it. It was wonderful. But the realization is this. It was fun. We were laughing, but also, don't mess with the Fleming boys. Because it's fine to play a Bible study with that guy and, wrestle around or whatever, but you don't want him showing up to your door mad. Don't want to make that guy mad. And this is what happens. It's like a classic, my dad can beat up your dad. For Paul, he realizes, I've been messing with the Fleming boys, and now dad comes knocking. When a bright light comes and knocks you off your mule, and then the bright light cracks its knuckles and says, you've been messing with me, ain't a good deal. For the Christians here, you can take this and just a reminder, Dad's got you. Isn't that a good deal? Dad has you. And if you really trust that Dad has you, you don't have to be fighting everyone all the time. You don't have to wrong every right. You don't have to, vengeance is mine. No, vengeance is the Lord's. Dad's got you. You can rest. Even when persecuted, I can rest. God's going to set that right. He's going to make every sad thing untrue, so I don't have to be the fixer. I don't have to be the healer. I can bring peace to the world. Because Dad's got me. And if you're not a believer in here, that's something to consider. I say this to every one of my kids. I said it to my boy last night, my little one. He's writhing around. All my kids are writhers when it comes to diaper changing. Maybe all kids everywhere are, but they don't like that. And I always say to them in a nice little sweet sing-song voice, it sounds a little weird, but I say, if you fight me, you will lose. I just want them to conform because I'm going to get this diaper on you. I promise you I will. I'm 15 times your size. And that's what God says. He's wooing it too. Hey, maybe stop. I'm going to get this done. No one has ever taken God on and won, but many have lost a whole bunch, so maybe give it a thought. Verse 8. Paul says, after getting knocked flat, you can read this whole account in Acts 9. After getting knocked flat, he says, who are you, Lord? I asked. He says, I'm Jesus, whom you are persecuting. And then it says his companions didn't notice. And then verse 10, what shall I do, Lord? You see these crucial questions? These are questions that we all need to deal with. If you've never dealt with these questions, these are the ones to deal with. They're great questions. I can't believe you thought of this in that moment. Who are you and what do I do? Here comes the answer. I am Jesus. Do what I say. You want the best possible earthly life? Let Jesus be Lord and do your best to follow him. That's it. We could end. We could end for the rest of the year if we all just would do that. Let Jesus be Lord and do your best to follow him. And listen, you're going to get it wrong. We're going to get it wrong. We're going to mess up. We're going to take a job. We thought the Lord would lead in this way, and it was the wrong job, or we're going to get in the wrong relationship, or we're going to do the wrong parenting thing. We're going to do wrong. I think there is a marked difference. Someone should write the book on this. I think there's a marked difference in Scripture and just in general of failed obedience versus disobedience. Because I think if I fail at obedience, God kind of brings me in with the right hand and be like, that's okay, man. You are trying so dang hard. I love that. I love that effort. You are trying to please me. Yes, you botched it here. This can happen for churches. It's have we failed in obedience in some ways? Yes, but God supports that, and he wants us to keep growing, and we will learn obedience over time. It's a beautiful thing. Disobedience is a different story. And saying, no, God, I'm going my own way. I have a better plan than you. So what does he tell him to do? He says, what should I do, Lord? He says, get up. And that echoes into today. He's still saying that to us. Get up. That when we come to Jesus, here's what he gives us. He gives us a lot of things, but here's two things he gives us. First, he gives you an identity, a new identity. That you become a blessed, beloved child of God, irrevocably, unshakably. We talk about imposter syndrome. Some of us walk around with cosmic imposter syndrome. I don't belong. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I feel there's no direction in my life. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing or wrong. He mutes all that. He says, I got you. You're my adopted child forever. come what may. So that's why I can get up here and speak. I don't like speaking. I don't like spotlights on me. I don't like being the center of attention. I'm a little bit shy, actually, in many contexts. Why can I do it? Because I don't care. Whether you accept me or reject me, I am a chosen child of God forever, irrevocably. So send the complaints. And if he still has me up here speaking next week, I will speak boldly and faithfully, not because of me, because of him. I know who my dad is. I know who's got me. It's a life hack. It's freedom. He gives you that identity. Second thing he gives you, with that identity comes a job description, comes a purpose, that you are an ambassador of Christ, an advanced kingdom agent, storming the beaches of the lost world, armed with courage, faith, hope, and love. Oh, it's great to have those. So much of our world doesn't have those two things. They long for an identity, and then they want something to do. They want a mission. They want their life to have fulfillment and purpose and meaning. That's what he gives us. That's what he gives Paul here. He says, get up. You're not just supposed to lay off your mule. Oh, now you're a son of God. Now wait till heaven, and then you'll beat me up, Scotty, and that's it. Now get up and go. Verse 12. A man named, so he goes to the city, Damascus. A man named Ananias comes to see me. He was a devout, this is Paul talking, he was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. See what he's doing? He's still in his rhetoric. He's talking to a bunch of Jews who are angry at him. He's like, I'm a Jew culturally. I'm still a Jew culturally. And look who I hang out with, cultural Jews who also believe in Jesus. This guy's respected. He knows our prophets. He knows what they said. He loves Moses. He honors the law. And yet, Jesus is the path to salvation. He's still setting that up. Also, what we find here is that Paul says, what do I do? And Jesus says, go to the next city. He gives him the next step, but he doesn't give him the next 30 years. He doesn't say, you're going to do this missionary journey and then that missionary journey. Let me just lay out for you the rest of the book of Acts. He doesn't do that. What does he do? He sends them to church. It's the same thing he does today, that we find God's call and will in our life often in community. That's why it's important that we have healthy community. Because you can come and get accountability, you can come and get counsel, you can come and get sort of like adjusted, right size to go and do the thing. You find your true north. We do it in community through our singing, through our talking, through our learning, through our friendships, through our love. That's why this matters. That's why we need to strive to have a healthy church, because that's where people find their purpose, what God has for them. And then he comes in verse 13, and I love this. This is the picture. I once was blind, now I see. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. At that moment, I was able to see him. So when he falls off and has to go to the city, he is led because he is blind. I once was blind. Paul, who studied under the best rabbi. Paul, who's valedictorian in every class he's ever taken. He is top of the class. He's the golden boy. He's used to calling the shots. He's used to writing the memos. He's used to leading the team. And now he's led by the hand like a child. So must we all be to find the kingdom of God. We don't come to God and be like, man, I'm pretty gifted. Don't you want me? If you have me, I could really help the team. No, we come in tiny. The gate is so small, we have to crouch down and we slither into it. We bring nothing. He calls us and uses us and makes us and molds us. We don't add to that. We are the created, not the creator. So even Paul, he has to be made like a child. And then all of a sudden, I once was blind, now I see. He's awakened. And what meets him at his awakening? Brother. What does he say to address this crowd? Brother. He's repeating the things that he's heard before. Brother. Echoing from the mouth of his Savior. When Jesus finds Peter on the beach after Peter has denied him 3 times, it's brother. It's the pattern here. I love this because you can see this in Acts 9. You get the other side of the coin. Ananias gets told, you're going to go find this guy. And he's like, okay, what's the guy's name? He's like, his name's Saul. And he just laughs. He's like, have you seen the dossier? We're not going to Saul. Saul's the problem. God, I think you got the wrong name. They can't go to Saul. He's the worst. We're not going to go get Saul. Saul's an enemy, and he has fear, and he has doubt. But then he has trust in God. That creates courage, and that leads to unity. Brother Saul. That grace is an inviting ocean, and there's room for anyone, even someone like Saul, like Paul, who's been persecuting. That Paul then dives in. Verse 14, then he said, Ananias, the God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will and see the righteous one, and to hear words from his mouth. You'll be his witness to all people of what you have seen and heard. And now, what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. Paul dives in. Unity invites him. And then with that unity, he's given identity and will be given purpose. Then Paul does a thing. He's telling his story to the crowd. He's still in this moment telling the story. He does a little jump cut because then he takes some time, and then he eventually comes back to Jerusalem. And that's where we are in 17. When I returned to Jerusalem, this is Paul talking to the crowd again, and was praying at the temple, I fell into a trance and saw the Lord speaking to me. So the thing about this too is Paul doesn't go straight out in a missionary journey. The discipler is discipled first. He rests and he learns and he gets strong and gets on his feet. And then 18, and I saw the Lord speaking to me, quick, he said, leave Jerusalem immediately because the people will not accept your testimony about me. Lord, I replied, these people know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. So God says they're not going to listen to you. He's like, of course they're going to listen to me. They can see me. He's appealing to logic. They know who I was. I was attacking the Christians, and now they know who I am. I'm the leader of the Christians. Of course they would listen to me. I've joined that team. They can see the difference. Question today, do you have that power? The power of story. That the difference the gospel makes in your story is stronger than any argument on earth. You can come with all the apologetics and come with like, oh, well, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that stuff's great. That's fine. But what's more meaningful is that I knew that guy for a while, and he was this way, and now I see him, and he was this way. My wife and I were talking about someone at our house. We were just having a conversation about this person, and all of a sudden I said, that guy's so different. He was great before, I loved him before, but at 3 years, he's just different. There's just you can see it in his eyes. There's just this difference. That affects people. That's what allows people to hear what you're saying, is they look at you and just see something that doesn't make any other logical sense. And that's what Paul is appealing to. He's different. People say that, are you different? And then he goes too far. He just pushes it a little too far. He says, I was killing Stephen. I was there. And then verse 21, then the Lord said to me, go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. That's the non-Jews. So the Jews are hearing this. They're like, you're going to take this to them? See, the nationalistic fervor, their preferred brand of momentary idolatry, couldn't handle good news if it meant good news for them. Don't we have some of this? Like good news, but not for the liberals, or for the conservatives, or for the black people, or for the white people, or for the foreigners, for that country or this country. We a lot of times have that built up. Jonah had this in the Old Testament. The Jonah's called to go to Nineveh. He didn't want to go to Nineveh because of them, the Ninevites. He didn't like their race. He didn't like their nationality. He didn't like their socioeconomics, their government. He didn't like their morals. Be careful not to carry them around. And thank God, God doesn't carry them. Because while we were yet sinners, while we were yet rebels, while we were yet his enemy, he died for us. He didn't have an exclusion. We shouldn't either with our gospel. And for some of us, it's not a them. Sometimes it's a that. I've talked to so many people where maybe we're reading the Bible and they're like really liking the Bible. The Jesus stuff's cool. He's saying some good stuff at Sermon on the Mount. They're like, this ethic seems amazing. Wow, how do you think of that? That's incredible. I like that. That would work. And then all of a sudden he like heals someone. You're like, oh, I'm out. He's walking on water. Miracles. That's why I can't believe in this stuff, because of the miracles. Over the years, I've thought about this. Why do so many people fight so hard for miracles not to be true? It's like, well, you can't prove them. Well, of course you can't prove them. Everything that we can prove is based on patterns. You recognize the pattern, that's how we can explain photosynthesis, because it's the pattern that happens and has always happened, so we can study the pattern. Miracles are supposed to break the pattern, so you can't study it. So of course you can't really prove them, but why do we want them not to be true? What we're saying with that is I'd rather live in a world where terrible things predictably win every time. Where nature and cancer and sickness are truly an equation of grief. The last couple decades has been interesting because there's superhero movies, and some of them, I'll just level with you, are terrible. And they make hundreds of millions of dollars. We show up on opening night for these superhero movies, and we love superhero movies. We want so true superhero movies, but we want them to stay fiction. We don't actually want anyone pulled out of a burning building. What a weird disposition, and I think this is where the disposition comes from. I don't think people are actually against miracles. I think they fear that the miracles might miss them. And so they try and take them down. Just lop out the structure entirely. They'll be missed, or they can't control them, or they aren't deserving, and they're partially right. They can't control them, and they aren't deserving. That's the miraculous part. Paul was undeserving. He was worse than that. He deserved death. He deserved the Christians to mob him and end him. Yet he was saved, and he was used mightily by God, maybe more than any other human has been. That receiving God's grace, the greatest of all miracles, is remarkably, outlandishly, incredibly commonplace. It's exceptional, but it's commonplace in that it's happened to people in this room. Not just one. It's happened to billions of people worldwide. That it is exceptional yet commonplace because it's offered freely, fully, and not on the basis of who you are, but because the God of story so loved the world. That's what Paul says. That even the Gentiles will believe this, so I'm going to go to the Gentiles, and that's worse than a bad talk or some flatulence breaking out or something. He completely loses the crowd. He's not going to get them back. He goes over on the day. He's taking to this would be like me, like taking a big crowd of people, getting to talk about the Bible, and then as you leave, there's an exit survey. Like, was I moved spiritually or not? Every single person in that crowd, check no. What a loser, right? I was thinking about Billy Graham. There's something I read about Billy Graham where one time he was preaching and 10,000 people came to believe. And I was like, whoa, that's winning. He must have been a way better preacher than Paul. And then I looked at some Billy Graham stats. Do you know that one crowd he spoke at was 1.5 million people? If you get 10,000 out of 1.5 million, you ain't doing that good. Like, that's not that great. The point I'm making is it's not about the outcomes. God handles the outcomes. He gets whatever he wants done. It's not about the outcomes. It's about the faithfulness to serve. So what our call is to be like Paul, to be like Billy Graham, to tell your story in season and out. Let the outcomes, leave that to God. If the high schoolers aren't listening, if the seventh graders aren't listening, whoever isn't listening, fine. Paul went over on the day, but he won. He was a celebrated champion because he stepped up to the mic and did what he was called to do in that moment, faithfully. 22, the crowd listened to Paul until he said the Gentile thing, and then they raised their voices and shouted, "Rid the earth of him, he's not fit to live." Paraphrase, kill him. Let's get him. That's what that is. 23, as they were shouting and throwing off their cloaks and flinging dust into the air, I mean, they were ready to roll. They're like taking their clothes, they're warming up. They have tearaway pants on. They're like getting loose, man. They're ready to kill somebody. They're fired up. They're throwing their cloaks, flinging dust in the air, and the commander ordered that Paul be taken to the barracks because he'd be protected that way because they had to figure out what to do. He directed that he be flogged and interrogated in order to find out why the people were shouting at him like this. Remember, he's in Aramaic. They don't speak that, so they don't know what's going on. What did he say to make them so mad? And then that flog, it's a cat of 9 tails. They're going to bend him over. They've got 9 tails on it. That's why it's called that, and there's shrapnel in it, and they're just going to beat his back until like kind of is just a mush kind of soup. That's what they're going to do. As they stretched him out to flog him, Paul said to the centurion standing there, so calm, "Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty?" And when the centurion heard this, he went to the commander and reported it. "What are you going to do? This man is a Roman citizen." So the commander goes to Paul and asks him, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" This is like if you're an American, you're granted due process. They can't just lock you up and throw away the key. You get your day in court. A Roman citizen gets his day in court, and Rome took this stuff very serious. They wanted order. They didn't eat their own. So he's saying he's a Roman citizen. This guy's got to stress test it. So the commander went to Paul and said, "Tell me, are you a Roman citizen?" He said, "Yes, I am." 28, the commander said, "I have to pay a lot of money for my citizenship." And then Paul just like mic drops him. He goes, "But I was born a citizen. In some ways, you're second-class citizen." We don't know how he got it, his grandfather or his father. Who knows how he got it? They did some act of valor and they granted him this. But it's a big deal. He's a citizen. I think about this. I've shared a little bit of this, but one of my first adult person jobs, I was an assistant soccer coach at a college. They're going to pay me $10,000. It was a 10-month contract. I remember I got my first check right when I got there. I got it on day one. I remember calling my mom, and I was like, "You cannot believe what they are paying me." It just felt like so much money. It was this amazing moment. I got this check, and they don't take any taxes out when you get paid that little. So I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with all this money? Gosh. So I had this huge check. I'm surprised it didn't come as a big check. I mean, it just felt like so much money, $900. It's amazing. But then a few days later, my pay went up. And my pay went up for a bad reason. A guy got in a car accident. And he was an English teacher there at the school. And he got airlifted out of there. It was really bad. He ended up being fine. But they had 3 or 4 classes that didn't have an instructor. And I was starting a master's program, so they could wrench me into an adjunct role temporarily for those courses. And those courses, one of them was creative writing. And I'd been an English major, so they knew it fit. They knew what my grades were. They were like, okay, this guy could probably do that. And the other one was ESL, English as a second language. I've told the story before. I went to the airport to pick up some of the students that I was going to be teaching. And I was like, hey, man, how are you doing? And he said, my name's Maroon. I was like, cool, where are you from? And he said, my name's Maroon. I said, are you hungry? He said, my name's Maroon. I was like, this is all this cat can say. And I'm supposed to teach him to say other stuff, all the other stuff. Whoa. So that's what I did. I had like 20 or 30 international students who could say effectively, my name is Maroon, or my name is Paolo, or my name is Susanna, or whatever. And I had to teach them to say all the things. And then there's creative writing. And I had to teach kids about story. And I remember sitting on the lap of my mother as she told me stories. She was real into reading to me. And then when my parents went through the kind of messy divorce, it had been a terrible thing. I was in 6th grade. It was like formative years. I was prepubescent. All this stuff was happening. You start to like girls, but you hate girls, and you're scared of everything. And then your parents are having all this stuff. And it was just a hard season of life. And I had this teacher who wore a cowboy hat. And once a day, he'd pop his boots up on his desk, and he'd read to us. And his rules were, you can lay your head down, you can even sleep, you can draw pictures, you cannot talk. And he'd read to us, sometimes for 10 minutes, sometimes for a full hour, about monkeys and trees, or about this hobbit who goes on a treasure hunt with some dwarfs. And I would just escape. In that moment, a season of hard life, I just got to get out of there. And I so desperately needed it, so I just so in the story. So then I got asked after a few years to go speak at this camp. And it was a camp for students, and there was about 200 students, and I talked every night, and one night it just blew up, and everything was like, in a good way, it was like really good, and like it was effective, and and so the church that was sponsoring this said, will you come speak at our church? I said, sure, and there's 900 people. I didn't know what I was doing. I'm untrained, and I just talk, and it goes really well. All these people are coming forward, and it's just going great. And then I got 2 pieces of feedback, a whole bunch in that season where it was going great. You know what the 2 compliments were? You explain it in so many ways, and it just feels like a story. I am Maroon. I had to explain it in 94 ways how to tell those kids how to say, can I go to the bathroom? Story-wise, it had been the one thing I studied, the one thing I understood, the one thing I loved. And I think about that, none of that was my doing. And that's how Paul is right here, that his ancestry is not his choice. Do you ever look back at your story and find that God doesn't get lucky? Paul was a Jew of Jews. He had this mental acuity to be able to learn things. It says in Acts that he would be minister to the kings. How would he become minister to the kings? It hasn't happened yet. It's about to. Through his citizenship that wasn't of his doing or his making. 3 times his citizenship saves him. They're going to kill him. And he's like, I'm a citizen. 3 times it's listed. I bet 15 times it happens. They're going to kill him. They're going to get him. And people won't touch him or take a shot at him because he's a Roman citizen. None of that was him. So you think about your past, your skills, your talents, your successes, even your failures. God has delivered all of them to you and brought meaning to them and purpose to them. Sacred tools for which to build a lasting kingdom. Some of you, it's like the worst thing I ever did is the thing that will elevate you to be an expert, and the worst thing you ever did for other people who are doing that same worst thing to become better. That's a beautiful thing that God does. And what we're going to see here is that Paul becomes this hot potato. That's what's going to happen in the next few weeks. Everyone just passing him from, no one knows what to do with this guy. He's a Roman citizen. He's in trouble with a lot of people. He's done all this thing. He's creating this huge movement. No one knows what, so he gets passed from one ruler to one ruler to one ruler to one judge to one judge to one judge. It's an incredible thing, and all of it is for God's glory. None of it is in his control. And he just keeps rolling into bigger and bigger audiences. So, a couple takeaways. Someone this week told me, we really like it when there's takeaways. I don't usually do it. I don't always do it. Here's the takeaways. Takeaways for you, 3 of them. 1, just be ready in season and out. Be ready with your story. If you're a follower of Jesus, be ready to tell someone why and how you're a follower of Jesus lovingly, non-judgmentally, kindly when the opportunity arises. 2, know your story. You can't tell your story if you don't know it. And then it helps to know God's story because you can find the connection points. That's what God must have been doing. Oh, God was provident even there. And then 3, realize the gifts, recognize the threads in your life, the through line that goes through your life. And then leverage your skills and passions towards things that can glorify God, bring hope and peace to the world. Back to Daryl Davis, that black man. He didn't choose to be a black man. I mean, none of us choose our race. We don't choose our parents. He might have chosen that. He might not have. I don't know what he would have chosen. We don't choose. He's this black man. He's musically inclined. He didn't choose to be musically inclined. He was musically inclined. And then he was raised in an environment where that music could be developed. We could learn and grow. And in learning and growing and being that about, he joined bands, and those bands would tour. And one of those tour spots led him to a bar, and he played, and this guy fell in love with his music. And finally loved his music so much that he had to sit down with Daryl Davis. And he said, Daryl Davis, I love your music. I hate your skin. He's a registered member of the KKK. And Daryl Davis is sitting there at a bar after hours with a registered member of the KKK, a black man and a white man. And you know what Daryl Davis says to him? Brother. He didn't say, brother, you're right. But he says, brother, let's talk. What's your story? What's my story? And they begin talking. And Daryl Davis, eventually, he attends KKK rallies. And at KKK rallies, one of the things that happens is they burn crosses. One of the reasons they burn crosses at these rallies, they say, is to light the way for Jesus. And Daryl Davis said, I had to start going to those rallies because I had to tell them that my Jesus lights the way for me, not the other way around. That's the power. And that's what we get to do with our skills, with our past, with our experience, with our story. We get to light the way for others to a Jesus who's gone before us, lighting the way for us. Light's this way, guys, let's go. And that's the picture, and that's what Paul's doing here. We don't always know, and the room's sometimes very dark, and it's weird, and there's struggles. And yet the opportunity abounds. And so that's our journey. That's where Paul is. I'm going to turn it to Ty. Is Ty up here? You mind praying for us before we do some music? So we're going to do some songs. I'm going to let Ty have a prayer, and we'll sing one song together, and then we'll come back next week fired up, yeah? All right, Ty.